You are listening to and streaming a More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Corte and really honored to be in conversation with Phill Branch. He is the author of this beauty right here. I'm holding it here in my hand. For the
Looks
people who are
good.
streaming, you can see the double Dutch fuss. I mean, it looks like a beautiful work of art on the cover. Phill Branch, he is a writer. He's a live performance storyteller, a regional Emmy Award-winning filmmaker, and founder and creative director of Baltimore's Story Fest, and a proud Hampton University man, former professor who went back to build the film studies program at his alma mater. Talk about rooting for everybody Black. He's currently a resident artist at the Howard County Center of the Arts in Maryland. And as I mentioned before, he's written this book, The Double Dutch Fuss, which is a memoir that I'm telling you right now. You heard it from me right now. It belongs on the same shelf as How to Say Babylon. I'm just saying. Welcome to A More Perfect Union, Phill.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. Let me start with the title, The Double Dutch Fuss, because the title is doing so much work before you even open the first page. Double Dutch, a Black girl's game or rope game, the very game that got you in trouble with your father as a boy. Walk me into the image and what it means as the frame for this entire story.
I think as a storyteller, I've had to learn that every piece of information on any project that I do has to be thought out, whether it be the colors on the poster, the title, the framing. And for me, the title came late to the story. I built the story and under another title, something that I had been working with around this idea of feeling isolated. And then as I got into about a year into the writing, the story about that interaction with my father and him discovering that I was jumping double dutch was just sitting with me. And I thought I wanted to convey that this book was about sort of masculinity and the constraints around masculinity and how those impact us as a community. And I just thought, what better way than this game, which seems really simple and free and full of joy, um, as sort of the symbol for this thing that brought on so much pain for me in my life. So I thought it could be visual. And I thought it was something that we could all relate to without even having to explain what it might mean to a Black father of a certain time to see their son jumping double dutch.
And thank you for helping to set the table for us, and connect the dots to the title and the image on the cover of this beautiful memoir. Did you feel policed? Did you feel like your masculinity was policed by your father or your family as you were coming up?
Yes, but of course, when you're 5, you don't know what's being policed exactly. You know that you are being watched. You know that you're being noticed, and often you don't know why. It takes a while for you to figure out, oh, I'm doing something wrong, right? And I would say around 5 or 6 is when I realized that that wrong thing was I was being a boy in the wrong way, right? Had nothing to do with who I had a crush on or anything like that. It was just how I moved through the world. I was quiet, I was bookish, and I didn't want to play football. My dad was a big football guy. And these are all little signs that maybe he's not like other boys. And what I found that men did was to work double time to make you like other
Hmm.
boys. And when you're young, you're just trying to make people happy. You're trying to figure it out. Because who doesn't want to be liked, not loved? Who doesn't want to be liked by their father, right? A
Hmm.
lot of us have fathers who loved us. Um, we don't all have fathers who liked us. I wanted my father to like me. So you try to do the things that, make his eyes light up. And I did feel watched, because we are watched, you know, we are from the minute we're in the world, and they start throwing boys in blue and girls in pink and the barrettes, and you got to put earrings in her ear. People are gonna think she's a boy, and
Hmm.
like, can she turn one? Before we start worrying about, we are being policed. Um, and a lot of it isn't with the intention to harm. It's just what's been passed down, what's been done before. And then, but what that creates is it doesn't leave a lot of room for the individual to find themselves before you start manipulating the pieces. And yeah, that's what it was for me. That manipulation that I think we all kind of go
Hmm.
through in our families.
I mean, I really love what you had to say about, your father loving and liking you. You knew that your father loved you, but you wanted your father to like you. Can you tell us about the first encounter with your dad where that was your takeaway? Dad loves me, but he doesn't like me.
I think for me, there's sort of an error of moments from when I was a little boy living in Newark, New Jersey, where I vividly remember seeing disappointment. Something I say in the book is that you can look in someone's eyes right away, especially as a kid, and tell if they're feeling you or not. You don't know why, you don't really have the words for it, but you know that you're doing something that doesn't get you the same attention as the other kids, right? Kids pick that up pretty easily. I'm not, there's something off. And I remember being really young, the football incidents, like with him wanting to play football with me and me not performing that as well as he wanted me to. I remember just sort of him being loud and rough and and I want to sit and read, and the thing that was confusing was they loved that I could read really early. They
Mhm.
loved that I was smart, but they also wanted me to go outside and get scratched up falling from a tree. Like they wanted both of those things, and I wasn't giving both of those things. And something I talk about in the book is not knowing the rules or not following the rules the right way. You know, I found myself often when I was young breaking boy codes or man codes that I didn't even know existed because I'm a kid and feeling disappointed when I was letting my father down and feeling like I don't know how to be. And I don't even know why because I'm 5 and I'm 6 and I'm 7. I
Mhm.
don't even know what's wrong, but I know something is wrong.
I mean, I really appreciate you really going there with your father in this book, in part because at its core, this is a father-son story, and
Mhm.
you describe him as this magnetic, complicated man, this football player, slash army vet, the guy that men wanted to be around, and the guy that women loved. And then there's young Phil, who he looks at and sees something he cannot accept. This is a particular kind of pain. This is not
Mhm.
just a stranger's rejection. This is your father. Talk to us about how you found the language for that on the page.
Time, right? So I had to go through it. One of the things that I teach as a storyteller, as a writing coach, is that you have to be enough away from it to process it. Um, and not only for your internal pain and trauma, but also to be able to write about people who you might love deeply, honestly. Um, I've had enough distance from these moments to be able to write more fully about the experience. Um, I feel like I'm able to write this story because I don't hate my father. I think I did not want to write a story that was pointing a finger at his flaws and saying how bad of a guy he was. I think what was really important to me, and it really is music to my ears to hear you say that this is a father and son story, is that I wanted to tell a particular kind of story that I think hasn't been told. Um, one of my fears, and I was listening to the Idris Elba conversation, is about being pigeonholed and put in these boxes. And one of the things I was really explicit about with my editor, Michaela, who was amazing, was that I think this story resonates with people, whether you identify as straight, queer, whatever. It's about relationships with your parents, particularly father son. And I said, I know a lot of times books from a certain lens get relegated to 1 month of the year. It's June, it's Pride, and I said, my challenge, the thing that I challenged myself was that anybody could pick up this book and see that this book deals with certain issues, but also overwhelmingly is talking about freedom and how we love each other and the ideas around how father and son relationships have such a significant impact um, on our lives. And I was worried that people would relegate it to one corner of the bookstore. Like, this is for, but what
Yeah.
I've seen is that many of us have had these complex relationships with our fathers and have found some commonality in the stories that have shared, even if you didn't have the same walk that I had, um, that you see that people are finding some similarities in these relations. We've all, we've had experiences with our
Mhm.
parents, and in particular, for those of us who have known our fathers, um, from especially of a certain era, you know, um, that we're processing, and I think this book does that.
Yeah. Yeah. You also write about early inappropriate relationships with men twice your age. And I really want to ask about this with care because what you're describing is a pattern that many queer Black boys have lived, but very few have named out loud, let alone in print. And
Mhm.
so the way that that vulnerability gets exploited before you even have the words for what's happening to you. And so talk to us about what it took to be that honest and who were you writing for when you wrote those sections of the book?
You learn things about yourself in stages, right? So at that time, when things happened to me in high school, when I was having these moments with this particular teacher, this educator, um, at the time, I was such a problem to myself that I knew something was wrong with him, but I was still so focused on my brokenness that I couldn't step back enough to think about all of the grooming that took place for me to even feel that vulnerable with that man, right? It just felt like a paternal relationship, somebody who was coming in to be a mentor. You don't know that you're being sort of groomed for something else, right? It took me years to get to that place. Um, this particular teacher has had great relationships with many of us, right? That in later in life that I've seen people process on social media in different places. I think it took people a good decade or so to understand, oh, this guy wasn't my friend. This guy, this didn't just happen. This was planned. And I think in writing it, um, which was really difficult, I'm gonna be honest, to write. Um, in writing it, I wanted to make sure that I was not only telling the truth, but also being fair about what I was feeling, not just what he did, because I think that piece is important. It all ties back to the family unit. What I try to explain to people is that teacher doesn't get in if I feel like my family has my back. If I'm able to go home and be whole, I don't have to have that teacher giving me things that I'm not getting anyplace else. I could come home and say, hey, I think this is weird that this thing happened, and not fear that they're not going to care about the weird thing, be more focused on, are you that way? You know, and
Mhm.
I think a lot of us carried secrets because we were afraid to tell our parents, even the bad things, because we thought that we would still get punished for that. And I would tell you, I did my first reading, public reading, um, of the book when we launched on June 2nd. And my mom is there. And I'm
Mm.
signing books. I'm having the time of my life. I finally made it, right? I'm signing the books. I'm having a good time. And my mother looks at me and she says, because she's listened now to like 3 or 4 chapters by this point, and she says, why didn't you tell me?
Mm.
We're in the front of the book. She says, why didn't you tell me? We're in this full bookstore, sold out, and we're having this moment at the podium to ourselves. And I said, I was a kid. I didn't know I could. And I could see the heartbreak in
Mm.
her. Um, but I think I tell it because I want parents to know that it's not just about you wanting your kid to be a certain kind of way to shape and form them. When you make them afraid to be themselves, they're not going to tell you things. You're sending them out to the world, to these people who know that they're not going to tell you. And I will
Mm,
say that the world has changed quite a bit. And as a professor at Howard and at Hampton, it has warmed my heart to see people
mhm.
be a little bit more um, true to themselves.
Yeah.
And maybe we're seeing a little bit less of that situation. And, but yeah, you
We're
know,
gonna we're gonna pick up that thread when we come forward, specifically about Hampton. This is where your story turns because Hampton is where you rebrand, as you put it, and I really love that word because it's honest about the performance of it.
yeah,
You didn't just heal at Hampton; you constructed a new version of yourself so that you could survive. We're going to talk more about that and more when we come forward. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We're talking about this beauty right here, The
yes.
Double Dutch Fuss, with author Phill Branch. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm delighted to be in conversation with Phill Branch. Phill Branch. He is the author of The Double Dutch Fuss. That's what I'm holding in my hand here for people who are streaming us. You should know that you have to take my word for it. There are a number of folks we are in community with, a number of folks who've been guests on the show that have issued advance praise for this book right here. I'm talking about Shirley Ralph, who says the Double Dutch Fuss stands as a testament to courage, growth, and the healing power of storytelling. Roy Wood Jr., who's the author of The Man of Many Fathers, he says, quotes, when wielded responsibly, humor can heal and also educate. Branch exhibits this ability with great profundity as he shows us how fathers shape us, even when they don't know how to love us well. Those are two heavy hitters, and they aren't mincing words. Congratulations to you, Phill
Thank you.
Branch.
Thank you. Thank you. And I read Roy's book, The Man of Many Fathers. It's incredible. And there were so many through lines that reminded me of my own story. So it was really great to get that blurb from him.
Yeah, and you know what else is really great is your commitment to Hampton University. And before the break, I mentioned that you didn't just heal at Hampton; you constructed a new version of yourself that could survive. As a professor who later went back to Hampton, what did you think that the institution, gives young Black people as they can't get from anywhere else? So, what exactly does it demand of young Black people that maybe needs to be interrogated a bit more?
I think what I saw as a student um, and as a professor on the positive side is this tremendous sense of community that you know that just sort of put people together and creates these bonds that will last for a lifetime. And I think there's this sense, and I really am big on this, that in some institutions, not just HBCUs, but you hear it's like you're overcoming. The narrative is always overcoming, overcoming, overcoming. There's something about being someplace where your shoulders are relaxed and you just
Mm,
believe that you can do the thing. And you're surrounded by people who look like you, who want to do the thing too, and they're still cool and they still hang out. They still do. They're not. They're just kids. They're just young people trying, men and women trying to do the thing. And I think that gives you so much power to be surrounded by that. I know it did for me, and I think as a professor, looking at my students, that piece filled me with pride. But I will say that one of the other pieces that I think Hampton taught me is the importance of resistance.
mm,
You know, I tend to run my mouth, and I don't know, and say what I have to say in certain instances. So when I came back as a professor, there were certain things that I love about the university, but there's certain things that I saw that I had to felt like, I saw myself in some of my students and I had to protect them. And you know, I don't know what I'm doing at the time other than what it feels right to do to kind of put these students in a frame of mind that they belong on campus like anybody else. And to make your own way, to think for yourself. But when I fast forward, now these kids are in their 30s, early 30s, to have them come back and tell me things that I said to them and things I did for them that let them sort of be a little bit freer in whatever capacities, um, has really just sort of warmed my heart and just, you know, it feels good in that way. I think that's what, in some ways, that's what the story is about too, is about growth. Things don't stay in the same place. Hampton has two LGBTQ organizations on campus. That wouldn't have been imaginable in the 90s.
Yeah.
you know,
How many?
um,
How many?
two
A whole.
different ones.
I mean, a whole two.
Two.
And I'm with you. Hat tip. That is a major achievement.
Yeah. Yeah, that wouldn't have been possible. And along with other leaps that I saw the university make. But I think the biggest thing for me, Hampton is a fairly conservative university,
Hmm.
and not so much politically, but socially. And what I love is that I see now students are really saying, you know what, I get to have the education, the knowledge piece. I get to still show up as myself. And I think that's such an important thing. I'm going to say something. So, I'm surrounded by people who love to do certain kinds of service work
Hmm.
that to me often feels like respectability, sort of brainwashing. So,
Hmm.
um, it is good for me to see students showing up as they are. If you want to wear a tie, wear a tie. If you want to wear those high heels and the blue suit, go for it. But if you don't, and you want to wear your locks and you want to do whatever, do that too. And I think we're seeing more of that. I think that's so important, especially as people are coming into themselves, to not tell them you're not going to find a job if you don't look like this. They're too young for that. You can give them information about what's going to be out there facing them in the world, but I would argue that most people have an understanding of that already by the
Yeah,
time they get to Hampton.
yeah, and you really you described the double Dutch fuss as being the quotes quiet radical act of choosing to exist on your own terms, and I want to hold that phrase quiet and radical in the same sentence because we often think of radicalism as loud, as marching, as confrontational, but there's a kind of radicalism that happens in private. I think that's really what you're getting at. That
Yep.
happens in the decision to not perform, to not shrink, to not be who your father needed you to be, or who the industry needed you to be, or who the community needed you to be. Is that where you are now? Have you gotten there, or is this still a daily negotiation?
It is still a negotiation to an extent because I'm always learning something about myself. I'm in the publishing industry. I have a book out with a big five publisher. I'm learning how to navigate that, right? Most of my work has been done independently, you know. So when you're dealing with a big corporation and different stakeholders, again, you find yourself in a position, and luckily I work with some amazing people where you still have to make sure you're showing up as yourself, so that, the story that gets out is the story that you want. And thank goodness I worked with a team that was hearing me about certain things, um, that I was saying. And I think you just have to always be kind of mindful. I could have easily gone into this situation saying, hey, this is a big deal. Let me just do what they say, because they gave me this ticket, this golden ticket to this new world.
Mhm.
But I came in like, okay, let's see if this works. This is the story I want to tell. This is how I want to tell it. Um, and this is the ways I want to promote it and market it. And these are the people who I want to talk to. And the answer has been yes, 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 yes. And just let us know what you need. There will be a time where maybe you don't say that because you think you have to be a certain
Mhm.
way to be in certain spaces. And I think that is the message. I think people think you have to bang the drum every time you're trying to make some kind of radical change. Sometimes it's just saying no, no, like internally, and making a different choice. As a professor, I often had to, my personality is laid back, but so people think they
We
can,
can't tell, Phil. We
yeah,
can't tell.
and people think you can just push you around, you know, and they find out that that's not the case,
Yeah.
that. that, you know, so I think that is a really big part of the book is this idea of do it for yourself, whatever it is, make that change for yourself and let other people deal with it how they have to deal with it.
I mean, talk about a radical idea, doing it for yourself. My goodness. I really want folks in our remaining minutes, Phil, to be clear that this book isn't, just heavy, heavy. It's actually surprisingly humorous, and I think that surprises people who hear the subject matter when they hear queer identity and patriarchal violence and complicated fathers. They expect it to be heavy, heavy all the way through, but humor is a survival technology, especially in our culture and Black culture, and especially for people who've had to navigate spaces where their full selves were not welcome. And so, talk to me about the role of humor in this memoir and in your storytelling more broadly.
Storytelling, I came to live performance storytelling after a breakup is the way how I processed the breakup. I got on stage and talked about it instead of going to therapy. And it was amazing. It introduced me to a new craft, a new way of being as a storyteller. And humor was a big part of that, in part because I wasn't done healing. So I got to tell these hard stories, but because I have, which is really kind of sometimes surprising to people, because I'm so laid back when I get on stage, it's different. I'm still laid back, but I'm really funny. But I was telling these rough stories in this really laid back way with humor, and it worked for me. And I translated a lot of that into my early essay writing. But when I got to the book, one of the things that I had to be very careful with was that I wasn't burying any of the emotional truth under humor. But I
Mm,
wanted to maintain that lightness because it's kind of how I process things through humor. And I wanted that to come through in the book. So one of the first rejections I got for the book was that he's a storyteller. We don't know that he can do a form piece. I've seen him, he's funny, but I don't know if he can maintain the depth for an entire book. And I heard that and I thought, the challenge became for me was not only to write the book, but to maintain that storyteller voice where I can talk about important subjects and kind of take you there, but and
mhm,
and have some fun with it and laugh because I didn't want someone crying and feeling thrashed about for 300 pages and just
mhm.
feeling broken. I wanted people to get a little laughs and feel something, and
Yeah.
but I also didn't want to make it so that I was burying my truth under the humor as well.
Well, Phil Branch, this has been one of those conversations that I'm going to carry with me. I want to thank you for the courage that it took to write this book and for bringing it to our audience of leaders, learners, and listeners today. The Double Dutch Fuss. Write that down. Get it. Give it to somebody who needs it and follow Phil Branch wherever he goes next because he's not done. He ain't even close to being done. This ain't just a book. This is a movement that's
Mm,
brewing. And I love that about you. I love that about this work.
thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Music to my ears, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When we come forward, we close the show with a story about slavery in the digital age, enslaved workers forced to defraud Americans online from the other side of the world. We're not looking away. You're listening to and streaming a More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.